The leaders of Western civilization hate us. Why? We'll talk about that. VP debate preview tonight. We will discuss the flooding, hurricane, terrible stuff in Tennessee, North Carolina. All that and more coming up on I'm Right. Okay, first of all, Hurricane Helene. I wanted to get this out of the way right off the bat. I will be discussing Hurricane Helene, the flooding, all the terrible stuff in a little while. I don't want to make it political. I don't want to do a bunch of stuff there, but we will discuss it here in a little while. I wanted to talk about something else to open up the show tonight. Because John Kerry came out and said something recently, which I will play for you in a minute, not yet, but he said something recently about how annoying the First Amendment is. We'll get to that. But I need to discuss the leaders of Western civilization with you right now and how they think. Because we need to understand this because it will explain so much of how they act, the things they do, the things they say, that we look and it's almost nonsensical sometimes. I don't understand. Why would they do this? Why would they do that? Well, you know how I tell you the three characteristics all of our leaders have in common? We've talked about this a million times, all of them. Now that we've had a poisoned, rotted culture take over our country, all three of them, they apply to everyone leading this country. No love of country, no connection to the real world. They don't know how normal people live. And three, this is important, they see themselves as kings and queens, not senators or presidents or members of the House or even CEOs or what. They don't see themselves that way. They see themselves as kings and queens. And what's the difference? Let's discuss that really briefly before we go into why they hate us. What is the difference? Well, we don't fully appreciate this. Even I don't, because I don't have any other perspective. In America, we are free. What does that really mean? We love to sing about it, hand over our heart, July 4th, look at the fireworks, but what does it mean to be free? Well, what it means is you are not just a cog in the wheel. You're not just a peasant who has to do what he or she is told by the people in charge. To be a free person, to be free means you are a unique, God-breathed soul with rights nobody on earth can take away from you. That's what it means to be free. And if you're in charge or one of the political leaders in this country, what it means for you is you don't get to do all the things you might want to do to the masses because your power is limited and they are free. So if you are a senator, a CEO, one of the World Economic Forum types, a president, and you see yourself as this king, and that is how they see themselves. Remember, they see themselves as being way above us, kings, queens. All we need is their thoughts and their ideas, and they will govern us all. If that's how you see yourself, and that's how they see themselves, well, then the rules of Western civilization, the limits Western civilization puts on them, they hate them. They can't stand them. It's like a cheetah on a leash. He just wants to run and be free. He has so much he wants to do, and these rules keep holding them back. You know, you enjoy being free? Let me tell you something. Every single Democrat and the Republicans in leadership, this applies to them as well, in this country, they despise you, and more than that, they despise your freedoms. They hate it. As much as you love it, they hate it more. And because we live in the information age, this is the social media age, information age, and there's a lot of good that came from that, a lot of bad that came from that. One of the bad things that has come from the social media age is this. People just put all their thoughts out online all the time. Nobody, you can't stand in line for 5 extra minutes at McDonald's without getting on Twitter. Line is so long. Hashtag McDonald's. People just have to vomit out all of their thoughts. That's a bad thing. But the good thing is we do constantly get a window now into how the communist sees himself and how the communist sees you. He can't help himself. It used to be private letters to his communist friend across the globe. Now it's on video. Now they print articles about it. The good news about the overshare society is that mentality I just described, how they see themselves as kings and queens, it's on display at all times. Allow me to point you to the New York Times. The New Yorker, I'm sorry. This is a title. This is a legitimate title. I didn't make this up. Is it time to torch the Constitution? Some scholars say it's to blame for our political dysfunction and that we need to start over. Oh, you didn't think that was all, right? You did hear what I just said about how they see themselves as kings and queens and how they really, really hate your rights. That's what gets them. It's those freedoms you have. Why are you saying whatever you want to say? How could you question them? How could you question the king? Well, I'm grateful we have people like John Kerry to confirm my suspicions.
But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways.
If you really, really listen to that, and in fact, Mr. Producer, I'm sorry, I'm doing this on the fly here. I might ask you to play that again. If you really, really listen to that, there are a couple things that stand out to you. They scream at you. First, the First Amendment, your ability to speak freely. Man, it means everything. If you've ever opened up a history book, people have been arrested and murdered for speaking out against the powerful, against the government throughout the history of the world. And our founders were so terrified that that kind of rule could come to America. They ensured it was in the Constitution that you are allowed to speak freely, question governments, question doctors, question scientists, question the military, question everything that is your God-given right as a free American. One thing you will see when I have him play this again is when John Kerry describes it as not something wonderful, not something to be treasured. He describes it as a major block. But maybe the part that stood out the most to me and the part that very much should stand out to you is what John Kerry wants done with it. You notice the language he uses when he's describing the First Amendment. And he said, if we didn't have that, what would we do? In fact, I'm going to want you to play this again right about now, Mr. Producer. I'll point to you. But if we didn't have this First Amendment, what would we do with the people and the information we didn't like? Please play it again.
But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways.
You heard it that time, didn't you? If that pesky First Amendment wasn't holding John Kerry back, what would they do to you, to your rights, to speech they didn't like? What would they do? You heard him, you said it. What would they do? Hammer it out. Does he look at this problem of you having different opinions of him as an opportunity to persuade you, as an opportunity to win you to his side? Communist doesn't think in that way. If he didn't have this annoying First Amendment, he would just hammer out the problem, just like communists have always done. Do not discount for a moment how violent the people who lead Western society are. It is a fragile fabric of laws holding these people back from becoming the worst monsters in human history. And again, because we live in this era where everyone's on camera, everyone's writing an article, they're constantly out there discussing it. Consider for a moment the American media, of course. The American media, you know how despicable they are. They serve as simply a communist mouthpiece, a protectorate on behalf of the regime. And it's all left, right? Especially on major networks, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, it's just all left. You've got your firsts out there, it's Fox News out there, some other channels out there, but the main ones are all left. So it's interesting, what's AOC mean when she talks about going after the media?
We're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
We're looking into it. Gotta hammer it out, you see? There's a problem there, and I just gotta take a hammer to it. That's, of course, how they think. And look, I'm going to wrap all this up because I think you get the point, but this guy, Frank Leibowitz, went on Bill Maher's show, and people were angry about what he said. Look, what he says here is horrifying, but what he said didn't surprise me at all because I long ago accepted the people who lead the West feel like this about you, your rights, our institutions, about any checks on their power. The Supreme Court has been the ultimate check on communist power, especially over the last few years. So what if they weren't done with it?
What Biden should do, not that you asked, but when they passed that law, the Supreme Court passed that ruling, where they said, you're not the president, you're the king, which is what that ruling is. You can do whatever you want. You can never be, held responsible. I thought, Biden's still the president. No one seems to notice, but Biden should dissolve the Supreme Court.
Dissolve the Supreme Court?
I'm the president. I'm the king now, like you said, and go home.
It's Fran Leibowitz. I think I called her Frank. It's Fran Leibowitz right there. They're very honest if you simply listen and accept what they're saying. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. Now, it's a little dark. Maybe you're worried about having trouble sleeping tonight. I'm not worried about that, of course. I slept like a baby once again last night. I do every night. Now, if there is a night, like yesterday, where maybe I was worried about having a good night's sleep, I'd been up, I'd been drinking too much caffeine, I was studying all this hurricane footage, it's awful. So what did I do? About 9 o'clock, went into my kitchen, got a little coffee cup full of milk, warmed it up in the microwave, and then I took some dream powder from Beam, hot chocolate, mixed it up in there and just sat there and sipped on my hot chocolate for about 15 minutes. And then I went into bed and slept like a little baby and woke up feeling great. I had a cup of hot chocolate and slept well. Do you want to do that? Go get some dream powder from Beam. You'll sleep like a baby. Shopbeam.com/Jesse Kelly. We'll be back.
My best friend from kindergarten is still one of my best friends.
That's crazy.
Right? Stacey Johnson.
Yeah, that's dope. I love it.
We used to go to the clubs and her father Seville.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't. With the accent, we used to go to the clubs. Joining me now, my friend Eric Bolling, host of the show Bolling. It launched. You can check it out, youtube.com/@Eric Bolling. Eric, the accent thing murders me, man. The California Valley girl when she's not living in a ritzy neighborhood in Montreal, but man, when she wants to hood it up a little bit, she's got it in there.
Middle class Kamala, right, Jesse? And you're right. That boy, she laid it on thick there. It reminds me of when Hillary she went to Charlemagne the God's podcast and she had a bag. She's like, "Oh, check my bag. I happen to have hot sauce in there." What the pandering is absolutely ridiculous and disgusting. But listen, Kamala, she's got to do something. I mean, you look at the electoral map right now, Jesse. I mean, it's in Trump's favor. I never pay attention to national polls. You look at state to state, but she's behind. I know the New York Times, Siena Poll is going to tell you that she's ahead in some of the 5 of the 7 swing states. I don't believe any of that. The electoral map looks really bad for her. So she's really got to come out stronger than she's doing right now.
Okay, why? I know the reasons I don't like Kamala Harris, and I probably can assume some of the reasons you don't, but we're not the normies, the undecided swing voters who decide elections. Why is she struggling, Eric? What is it?
She's had no policy, Jesse. But here's the thing. So she goes to the border a couple days ago and says, "I'm going to fix the border. I'm going to do this, that." What the hell? You're where the borders are. Stop. You weren't the border. You're where the borders are. Thank God NBC and Lester Holt called her out. Wait, we didn't go to the border, but yeah, I didn't go to Europe either. She was the border. Everyone knew her as the person who Joe Biden said, "You're going to handle the issue at the border." And she did exactly what she was supposed to do. She did exactly what the Democrats wanted her to do. Do nothing. Allow people to come in. Because you hear what she said. When she did finally go to the border, when she realized that the border could cost her presidency, potential White House, she said that I'm going to fix it, but also we're going to look to do mass amnesty. I mean, can you imagine 20 million illegals here with a path to citizenship? It's over. There will never be another nationally elected Republican in America. Forget president, forget vice president. You may still have states like Texas and Florida here, the freest state in the union, voting for senators and Congress people, Republicans, but on a national level, we've lost it completely the minute that happens. So that's the plan. That's why she hasn't done anything for 3.5 years. Becomes president, she offers amnesty, and it's over.
So the American people, are they catching on to that? It's obvious to anyone paying attention, people like, Democrats, they got elected and opened it up on purpose to do exactly what you just said, bring in 20 million new voters, hand them citizenship, and boom, if you're a Democrat, you can run a moron like Kamala Harris and win the presidency. But the question is, are the American people on to this enough and they're going to go vote against it or not?
The other, besides the swing state breakdown of how you win the presidency in America, there's 7 states that dictate who's the next president. Besides that, there's another metric that you can look at because one can override the other. And the other one is demographics, the racial demographics in America. So if a Republican were to get 15%, I think is the threshold of the black vote, he's likely going to win. He or she's likely going to win. If a Republican hit a 40% of Hispanics, you're going to win. Hispanics outnumber African Americans by almost double. The Hispanic vote that you'll see in Pew Research and whatnot, they have it around 35, 36% for Trump. The number's way north of that. The reality is it's probably approaching 50. So I think with the Hispanic vote, I actually think the Hispanic vote is going to push the presidency to Trump. And it won't really matter what's going on in the swing states. I think that'll take care of itself with this number of Hispanics that are moving on to the Trump train. And my point is this: Hispanics are pissed off about the border. American Hispanics, people who've lived here, who've gone through the process or who were born here, who are Hispanic, hate the fact that there are people jumping the border without doing any of the things that they've had to do, or weren't born here. It's going to be a huge issue for Hispanics. I think if he gets 43, 45%, he wins.
Yeah, no, I see this in my own life with a lot of Latino friends I have. They tell me about family members who were Dem that are now independent, putting up Trump signs. And I tell you, on top of the border stuff, Eric, I get a lot of culture war stuff from those people. They are not down with the newest tranny flag, with all the new craziness that it really chafed on a group of people Democrats were banking on for a very long time.
100%. Latin American value systems almost line up more with the traditional American values. They're greatly Christian. They're not for the new woke nonsense of transgenderism. They're not for any of those things. And I think that's what is one of the reasons. But also because Donald Trump has proven to them, I mean, let's be honest, that Trump economic policies benefited Hispanics and blacks more than anything Joe Biden has done or could do. For whatever reason, the Democrats want to claim there are voters, but it doesn't. If you really break it down, blacks and Hispanics did much better under Donald Trump, certainly than they're doing under Joe Biden. That's a fact. And so the fact that Kamala Harris has no real policy, Jesse, there's a soundbite from about a month ago where Kamala Harris, I can't remember, a local Pennsylvania local reporter asked her, how are you going to fix the inflation issue? She was lost in the woods. She couldn't eat. This is 2 months into her, running for president. She had nothing. It was an airball. And I think people realize that. People who care about the economy, which is obviously probably the number one issue in America for a voter, realize that she has no idea what she's talking about. So it will be up to her advisors to give her policy. And you have this, who are they? What are they? What are they about? We know what they've been about. They've been about taxing you more, giving away free housing to illegals, giving away, forgiving student loan debt, going around the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says no. Joe Biden says, oh, but yes, executive order. I think people who care about the economy are going to realize that she's not the person to lead the most powerful economic engine on the planet.
Yeah, I think everybody voting needs to ask themselves, do they want this human being here to lead the economy next?
What is your economic plan moving forward for people who are living paycheck to paycheck and struggling for groceries and rent and homeowners?
So, look, I grew up, so my sister and I were raised by our mother. We lived for a long time in an apartment on top of a child care center. I, from a child, knew who our small business owners are, right? I mean, you're business leaders, but you're also civic leaders. You take seriously your voice and how you can mentor, how you can grow, right? Communities and the sense of communities. I love our small businesses. So a lot of my work, even in the Senate, was about increasing access to capital through our small businesses, and in particular through our community banks. Mm-hmm. So I've been responsible for billions of dollars more now going into our community banks, because they're in the community and then they know who's in the community and where the talent is and who's doing good in the community, what the community wants. Mm-hmm.
Generally, she's not wrong about that, but the problem is her policy doesn't do that. What she said was, I want to start 25 million more new housing units going forward. Well, how are you going to do that, Madam Kamala? Well, the only way you do that is by using the federal coffers, the bank account, to pay people to go do that. What does that do? That drives up inflation. Well, anytime government spends billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to do what she wants to do, inflation is going to go higher, and also you're messing with the housing market, because who's going to get those houses? Okay, low-income people are going to get the houses. What does that mean for the rest of the food? Does that mean everything else gets ratcheted down price-wise? So if you own your house, you've owned it, you paid your mortgage for 20, 25, 30 years, the value of your house is going to go down because Kamala Harris wants the government to give away free housing to people, those would-be renters or buyers of homes, that all the way up the chain. It's socialism. It's socialism if you really break it down to what she said. We want to start 25 million new homes. No one's ever asked, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? And by the way, who's going to do that? 25 million new homes? You know how much you're going to drive the price of construction labor up? So it's going to cost more to build your own home. And your own home, once it's built, it's going to be worth less. You just got to hold her accountable to what her own words are. Because she doesn't even know the words that she's speaking, what the effect on the economy really will be.
Of course she doesn't. Eric, thank you, my brother. All right. This place. We have to talk. Before we get to that, I want to talk about Pure Talk. See what I just did there? What? It's my cell phone company. I love them. They just sent me a brand new iPhone 16. You know, when you switch to Pure Talk, not only do you save a ton of money and support a company who shares and promotes your values, but you see, they'll send you a new phone if you want it. You can keep your phone if you like yours. You keep your phone number if you like it. If you want brand new phones, iPhones, Androids, they have whatever you want. They're on the same 5G network. It's everything you need for less money, and your money goes to a company that shares your values. Switch to Pure Talk. It's cake. It takes nothing. It takes nothing. It's 10 minutes. puretalk.com/JesseTV. We'll be back. Tomorrow night is a big night. I don't want to get cocky. Every time I've ever done that before about anything politically related, it's ended up disastrous to me. It's probably God teaching me something. But tomorrow night is VP debate night. Walz versus Vance. And looking at it on paper, any sports fans will know how far that gets you, but looking at it on paper, I like our chances. JD Vance has historically done very well in things like this, speaks very well. Tim Walz is some kind of cocaine-addled nightmare out of Minnesota with these weird hand gestures. And so I can't imagine he's doing well. According to CNN, he's fighting nerves, but I don't know. Dustin Grage knows him a lot better than I do. Joining me now, columnist at Town Hall, Dustin Grage. Okay, Dustin, they're saying Tim Walz is nervous. Now, this is the thing. People get elevated to these positions, and most people in the country don't know Tim Walz the way someone like you would know Tim Walz. Dustin, is he a good debater?
Well, I think he's a good communicator, which is, has its strengths, but it has its limits. In particular, when you get to an actual debate, though, he struggles quite a bit. Interpersonally, he's a pretty good communicator. Even public speaking, he's a pretty good communicator. When it comes to these debates, and he actually has someone pushing back on him with his policies and whatnot that have ultimately been pretty much failures all across the board. I mean, anything from education, where we've seen Minnesota consistently in the top 5 and outcomes, is now below the national average for elementary age kids. Contrast that to like a state like Florida, where they were right in the middle of the pack. Now they're number 1 post-COVID. And just all the way down the line, these policies have just failed dramatically. And that's going to come out here, I think, in the debate. He has a really tough time defending his own record. Tim Walz also had one of the biggest lies of the year in the last gubernatorial race, where he argued that well over half of the students had missed, I think it was something around 80%, I'd have to double check the number, have missed less than 10 days of in-class learning, which of course was an abject lie. There's just nothing to defend on that. Matt Walsh did a great piece on it as well, too. But he gets caught up in these lies, and that's why we have this kind of saying called Tim Walz lies. He has a tough time remembering all of them over the years, especially when you go back to his beginning of his career when he represented a conservative district. He was an A-rated NRA member. A lot of people forget about this type of stuff, but he has to go back and remember all of these positions he's held over the years. And then over time, they have dramatically changed. And when you go back to actually, I think what JD Vance and his team should be looking at isn't the last debates with Dr. Scott Jensen, his last opponent, but the Jeff Johnson debates in his 2018 run, where Jeff actually has a very similar debate style as JD Vance, where he's a little bit more even keel with his personality, but he battles with the facts, and he just sets up Walz for these abject failures and how he has to respond to them. Jeff did a great job, example, cornering him on single-payer healthcare, where even in Minnesota, not a very popular thing. He ended up having to run away from this, but in the debate, he actually set up Walz to agree that he's actually for single-payer healthcare. And that election was very close. I want to say it was only about 5 points in the state of Minnesota, where we struggle so much with our statewide campaigns. He would struggle with something like that if he got cornered on the national stage. So that's why he's very worried about this. A guy like JD Vance, where it's not so much ping pow, personality, but it's really just coming back to the facts and cornering the guy on his record. It's a abject strength for JD Vance in this case. And it's a major weakness for Tim Walz. And kind of as Tim Walz has said in the past, he likes to brag about how none of his students ended up going to Yale. Well, he's about to struggle quite a bit here with a lawyer in JD Vance who graduated from Yale.
All right, Dustin, I have to ask, actually, we'll probably circle back to this debate in a moment, but Minnesota is such a wild state to so many people from the outside looking in. I'm not talking about the incredible fishing and lakes up there, which I've had so much fun in Minnesota. Politically, I mean, it's always been treated in my entire political life as some kind of purple state that might be an option. I've never seen even the slightest bit of red come out of there. But What is it, Dustin? Is it just standard America where you have the Minneapolis, St. Paul, which are essentially the Soviet Union, and then a bunch of rural people who are forced to live under their rule? Is it that simple, or is it more complicated than that?
It is actually pretty much that simple. We just have this large populace where we struggle with these statewide elections, but regionally, Minnesota's only had trifecta three-way control 2 times in the last century. 2 of the times in the past, I think 12 years is how often it's happened. One of them happened to happen under Walz, and even in this trifecta, Democrats only have a 1-seat majority in our state Senate. It's a very, very slim margin. And it wasn't until this last session where they actually started losing on some of these bills, because then their constituents in these tight Senate and House seats, where we have a chance to actually take back both chambers this cycle, even though we only have 1 Senate race up this cycle. There ended up having to be a special for a congressional race coming up here. So there's actually a lot of spending still here in Minnesota. They're trying to defend these seats after going through what has absolutely been the most far leftist agenda in state history, probably the nation, over these last 2.5 years. What we've seen from Walz's administration, they're having a really tough time defending these records between trying to push for a sanctuary state, going through, and they had a $20 billion surplus, largest state surplus in state history. I don't think we've had anything over $8 billion in state history. They burned through all of that and found a way to raise an additional $9 billion. That's a 40% increase in state government year to year, and they have no way to fund it going forward unless they keep taxing and spending.
Jeez. Okay, Dustin, let's circle back to Walz and the military stuff. This got super, super hot for 5 minutes after Walz was announced as the VP thing. It's a major, major deal to me. Honestly, not even the command sergeant major stuff as much as bailing on his troops right before deployment. That's just so despicable. But these things, have they trailed Walz? Do you hear it in your Minnesota circles or political circles? It kind of seems like that stuff has died, but veteran friends who were non-political of mine still bring it up. It really bothers them.
Yeah, and quite frankly, this is still an important issue. And I don't think it's like this mass issue that's going to, take, 25, 30% of the electorate plus. It's a smaller portion, but it's a very important issue that's important to independents in particular. And when you look at this state of Minnesota, there's more Democrats, like just straight up, there's probably 10% more Democrats than there are Republicans. That's why we struggle a little bit here, but we have a significant independent population here, voting base in Minnesota. And that's how you get guys like Jesse Ventura elected. We're one of the few states that's ever elected a statewide independent. And there's a reason for that here in this state. And why do we see Kamala Harris with a 10% lead right out of the gate when Biden drops out? But now, since Tim Walz has entered the race and all this stuff that was never covered in the Minnesota media, never announced if it was covered. We've known about it for years. We brought it up on campaigns between his first congressional race all the way to the gubernatorial races. But quite frankly, just Minnesota media, they're owned by the liberal establishment here. They have to rely on larger infrastructure such as the DFL here. They have a very great election system. They have a monopoly in many cases. So they kind of lean on them. They're like, well, they're the guys in charge, so we're going to be friendly with the Democrats. And that's how they kind of created this monopoly a little bit here. But now that's on a national scale. It's actually being covered. And people here are noticing it now, finally. And since Tim Walz has entered the race, the latest Rasmussen poll actually showed Walz has dropped Kamala at 7 points since then. It's a 3-point race to Rasmussen. And even if you go to more of the kind of lefty pollsters in the state, I've seen as good as 5% down since then. So pretty dramatically, it's showing that, and even some of the congressional races here, they run their own internal polling. Every single poll has showed that with Walz on the ticket, they're actually less likely to support Kamala. So it's actually been really dramatic that way. He's such a polarizing figure between the lockdowns and now stuff, not huge issues. They're not going to be backbreaking, but they really cut at the margins with the stolen valor stuff. And, of course, as you mentioned, dodging deployments. And, he's got a little bit of history with that as well, even when in office. He likes to skip out on award ceremonies for current National Guard members when they get the highest honor possible through the president and Biden. We had an Afghanistan deployment here, known as the Bastards. That's their name. They're a artillery, I believe, deployment. No, tank division. They helped out in Afghanistan. They received the highest possible unit award, the presidential citation. Walz actually skipped that award ceremony despite being invited. And on top of that, he wasn't even capable of deploying his own National Guard here in Minnesota when Minneapolis was burning. So how can we even expect him to send resources over to North Carolina and Tennessee right now? I mean, he couldn't even do it in his home state. And this guy's just been an abject failure when it comes to a crisis actually dropping in front of his lap, whether it's deploying himself over to Iraq, whether it's deploying his own units over to Minneapolis, showing up to their award ceremony. I mean, how is this guy going to help on the national scale when he's not able to do that locally even?
Jeez. Dustin, thank you for what you do, my man. Come back soon. That was awesome. All right. I do have some hurricane things to describe. Speaking of the hurricane, the flooding, before I get to that, tomorrow night's the VP debate. We just talked about it. So I'm going to have some thoughts on the VP debate right after the debate is over. I'm going to go live on YouTube with those thoughts. It won't be long, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just some quick thoughts after I'm freshly digesting it. If you want to watch that, go to youtube.com/@JesseKellyDC. Just go subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll do a little video for that tomorrow night. All right? All right. Hurricane things. Next. All right, so let's discuss Helene and the aftermath and everything going on right now briefly. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this. I just wanted to spend a few minutes. First, why didn't we lead the show talking about this? Why didn't we lead the show with a bunch of flood footage and stuff like that? Well, here's something I don't like. I don't like it. I don't do it. I don't like it. Try to avoid it at any cost. I don't like politicking on dead people and devastated things. I don't like it. You've heard me rant about it many times when there's a mass shooting and the left grabs for guns. I don't like it. It bothers me. There are people, as you're watching me here on the First, there are people looking for their dead loved ones, praying they'll find them back, having lost everything. People are without food, water. I don't want to make this about Democrats or anything like that. That's one. Two, I see a lot of screaming about FEMA today. Very, very understandably. Where is FEMA? Why isn't FEMA doing more? What is this or that? Well, look, I'm going to read you something. This is directly from FEMA's website. Goal number one. This is goal number one from their website. To instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. Okay, so I never thought FEMA was going to do anything anyway. I don't have faith in government, certainly not our federal government. They're not capable of really doing anything at all. What I do have faith in is the American people, the people of Tennessee, the people of Florida, the people of North Carolina. I've been overwhelmed today as I've seen the charities, the individuals flooding, sorry to use that horrible pun on a day like today, flooding into that area to provide aid, to do what they can. The American people can and will do things the federal government simply cannot. There are stories everywhere about people gathering together to clear out bridges so things can get through. It's just, I have a lot of faith in the American people, and I have no faith in the federal government. And that's why we chose not to do some long 10-minute rant about the failures of Biden or Kamala or FEMA or anything else. The federal government we have now is corrupt, it's evil, and they don't care about the American people, any of them. They really don't. That's how sick these people are. So I just never think about them as someone who can or will help. They let Hawaii go. They let East Palestine, Ohio go. They'll let this go. These are not people who sit around stressing about flood victims or murder victims or fire victims or a chemical cloud victims. These are not people who think about you at all, except for when they think about how they can use you for your votes or find a way to punish you for being their enemies. So just set them out of your mind and let's try to help. Now, when it comes to helping, I'm just going to caution you with this. Believe me, I'm not doing disaster comparisons here. But we went through Hurricane Harvey here in Houston a few years back. You probably remember it. And the flooding was terrible. The whole freaking place was underwater. It was just terrible flooding. I mean, there was all kinds of needs and things going on. And so what I watched, what I witnessed during that was probably, honestly, it's influencing a lot of what I'm telling you now. What I watched during that was the people be amazing, wonderful. We're on group text message threads. Hey, someone's stuck in a nursing home. There's a traffic jam driving there. Guys are pulling boats out of their garage. It was awesome. The people were awesome. Freaking Cajun Navy coming in from Louisiana. It was awesome. And government aside, there were some charities who were awesome. Many were not. I want to caution you right now as you're sitting at home looking at flood damage footage and so many other things right now. I want to caution you just to be shrewd, be careful where you spend your money. There are a lot of wonderful charities, wonderful sounding, I should say, wonderful charities out there that they don't use your money the way you want it used. They take advantage of you. They take advantage of your good heart. They'll take in $100 from you and they'll spend $75 on it on private jets and $1 million salaries for their CEO, and maybe about a dime of it will get to actual flood victims. Do not fall for a big fancy name. Don't fall for heartbreaking videos and pictures. Don't fall for sad stories. This is how these people get over on you. Look up charity ratings before you give to any of them. There are plenty of charity rating websites, free. You can go look that up. If it's an individual with a sad story and pictures, maybe you're sitting there on Facebook, you're like, oh my gosh, he's lost his dog Muffy. He needs $10 I need to look how cute Muffy was. Make sure you know the person or know someone who knows the person. Just be shrewd as snakes. That's all I'm saying right now. Be shrewd as snakes, okay? All right. We will lighten the mood. Next. All right. It is time to lighten the mood. And it's very common out there to say things or even think things like, where are all the good people gone? Where are all the good women at? Where are all the good men at? It's very common to get wrapped up with all the negativity and horrible stuff and think like that. But there are still so many wonderful people out there, heroic people, people with good hearts, people with all that. And I got to give credit where it's due. Fox weather reporter, he's out there reporting on the hurricane stuff. I'm sure you've probably seen this. Lady is trapped. They're calling 911. Dude puts down the mic and just, well, here it is.
You can see right here, we've got this this lady drove into the area that's flooded out, and she's screaming right now. I just called 911. I'm in North Atlanta right now on the corner of Northside Street, Northside Drive. It's a pretty big populated area right here. She is still screaming, but we got you. We got you. 911, they're coming. You're good. You're good. Oh, man, it's a situation. We will get back to you in a little bit. I'm going to go see if I can help this lady out a little bit more, you guys. I'll be back.
Yeah. All right, Bob has got to go help them. Fox Weather's Bob Van Dillen saved a woman trapped in a car.
He went and
Look
got
at
her.
that.
He's saving her.
He called 911 for her. Bob is going to join us coming up. That guy is a hero.
Wow.
What a stud. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.